I think Elon Musk is truly a genius of a man, but his stance on this is wild to me. It's really wild to me. Like maybe it's like a
Because
40
he's not for it. He's not.
He is for open source AI, but I think it's in ignorance, honestly.
So explain the difference between open source and general.
So general AI and open source AI is actually the same thing.
Okay.
General artificial intelligence is an artificial intelligence that can operate and grow on its own. It learns on its own. It's given its own framework. Yeah. Autonomy.
Yeah.
True autonomy. Open source is just a description of how you handle your data. So the code that they're generating for this general artificial intelligence is open source, meaning you, Pat, at any moment can go into the hard drives, or not hard drives. I'm sure they have like some sort of shared. I wouldn't give anybody access, or the GitHub repository, or whatever it is that they're using. Control C, Control V onto whatever you're using, and now you are up to date with everything they have. I'm very much simplifying this, and anybody who's really technically savvy, more into general artificial intelligence, can probably run circles around me. The way open source code works is universal. So like the work that I do is not in artificial intelligence, but I could have my code be open source, and then anybody can take it and use it for their company. Why would I not do that? Because that's valuable to me. The same reason I would not give that up to anybody else, because that was my hard work to formulate this logic to kind of congregate all this data together. Why the fuck would you ever do that with AI, especially with competitors? Only logic that I can think is, and there is some merit to this, is that once you get general artificial intelligence, you will basically supplement humanity. And you will get to a point where it no longer matter. You will get to a point where abundance will be so prevalent that like poverty will be a choice amongst humans, not necessarily birthright. I mean, if you have to the point, if you combine software, you combine the robotics of SpaceX, Tesla, with artificial intelligence of like Sam Altman's OpenAI, you will essentially create a universal 24/7 workforce, produce everything over the course of time. Maybe not initially, but how long until they 3D print? How long until they 3D print cars? How long until you no longer need?
You're starting to see the 3D printing on houses
Already.
Yeah.
Without even AI.
Yeah.
Imagine when you have that.
Yeah.
And that's why I say within 20 years. Why 20? Why not 15? Why not 25? 20 because you're still in a nascent market for this. And if U.S. government gets involved and starts to regulate U.S. industry and the rest of the world is not, that will actually bring back the rest of the world. Because if you think that China or Russia spearheaded AI technology, you're out of your mind. Best and brightest are here in America. God bless. We start to hamstring ourselves. Give them a fighting shot. I don't like that. So I think 20 years because of bureaucracy. Thank God for the inefficiency of Congress. Thank God for the inefficiency of government. Because it's entirely possible this gets done beforehand. And once the toothpaste is out of the tube, like
toothpaste out.
Good luck.
Genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah. It's the same thing with guns, right? Second Amendment. Like,
yeah.
Good luck trying to get all those guns back.
Yeah. There's more guns than people here.
Good luck with AI. But I want to go back to the Elon Musk OpenAI. It's entirely possible one of the outcomes of this is prosperity so vast, so immense, the basic needs for humans go away. Everyone can have a house wherever the fuck they want, because you're not going to be supplemented to be in a city, because you're not going to be. And everyone will have anything they could possibly want in terms of like food and amenities, because the cost for the labor to acquire these things will be so substantially low to compare to where we are now, that, like I said earlier, poverty will be a choice. We are choosing to make someone live in poverty because we have such abundance. Flip side of that, humanity is a flawed creature. And I think that when you have people in hunt for power, cannot necessarily trust every actor in the field, so to speak. And where I can understand why OpenAI is a thing or open source coding is a thing, I don't like the idea that anybody at any time can get on the same footprint as Sam Altman.
Yeah, that's
Elon
crazy.
Musk
I didn't know
or
that.
any of these
And
companies.
I'm pretty ignorant to this.
Well, how do you think all these language learning models came out at the same time? How do you
That
think
makes
like
sense now.
ChatGPT comes out and then Facebook has theirs, and It's
Yeah,
because they're all
it's on
using the same
Google,
shit.
it's everywhere.
If you don't think that's happening in China and Russia and everywhere else, you're
Why wouldn't it?
delusional.
Yeah, happening here.
Yeah.
But thinking about when
Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole.
no,
Forgive me.
but it's got me thinking like, well, if everything is automated and and we don't have to work, it's like I feel like humans just have a general like desire to produce and to create things and to do things. So it's like, what if all of your needs are met? Like, what do you do?
What's our purpose?
Yeah,
We-
what are you doing?
that
Like, what are
is-
you doing with your days?
That's the question. We as humans,
You're
we intr-
being trained to fight in the military to protect whatever.
no, because if you think we're gonna,
Yeah, the
first thing that's
robots.
gonna
Oh,
be
that's
automated
true.
is
Robots. Yeah.
Look at Ukraine, Russia
Yeah.
now. You think it's? Don't get me wrong. I want to be careful how I say this. There are lives lost, human lives, and I'm not saying that should be reported, treated with disrespect. I think it's a travesty, personally. However, this war between Ukraine and Russia, some say proxy war with Russia, has shown us the true evolution of warfare in our time. It is the majority of people are not dying to ammunition, artillery. Majority of people are dying to drones.
Yeah, like they're most of it is, from my understanding, these like really cheap like $80 or $100 drones that they essentially attach a grenade to, and they just fly them into buildings, which
Yeah.
is crazy because
Yeah.
that's like you think of like
Right.
all this the like as far as technology can go and how smart and how like advanced shit can get. They're just you buying the cheapest drone that you can buy from Best Buy and essentially just attaching a grenade to it
One of
and
the things,
flying it into wherever they want it to be.
well, one of the things that I left off about our technological advancement, our productivity, our productive capabilities throughout human history is actually our propensity to cause death exponentially increases with our advancement of technology. You know what I mean?
Shit, they're not. Yeah, they wouldn't even need the drones. It's eventually just put the. They're gonna get so fine tuned with the weapons and iron bombs that they build it right into the bomb and just control the bomb right into the.
You don't need explosives.
Yeah.
What is the limiting factor between biology and technology? What can happen to a computer that renders that hardware a virus? Sort of technological software inhibitor. Biology is
Yeah,
just as
chemical
susceptible.
warfare, dude. That shit scares the
Yeah.
fuck out of me.
So if you really wanted to, and I don't want to get like too dark in this, but regarding artificial intelligence, regarding the advancements of technology, regarding the productivity, the exponential of humanity, this is why I go back to my I would much rather live in a world where the U.S. is leading, not because of our leaders, because our leaders are just as susceptible to stupidity as anybody else, because of our form of government, because we have checks and balances, because at the end of the day, the people decide. Look at this last election, right? Over anybody else. Whenever people tell me that, we're in direct confrontation with China, Russia, and all these other people, no, we're not. It's a mile run, guys. It's not a sprint. In your form of government, supplement anybody else over the course of time because it works. You can't have you can't have dictatorship. You can't have a monarchy over the course of time because that leads to civil unrest. We've seen it time and time again. Those that don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And whenever people tell me China's our number one adversary, Russia's our number one adversary, you have to do it in the context of grander vision. Our number one adversary in terms of because we consume everything. Like I said, they may produce low end goods. We consume those low end goods. And in a lot of ways, globalization has done its job. The reason why we're still alive today and we're not in some nuclear winter is because of the global markets, because of capitalism, because of greed. That's why I say out of all the 7 deadly sins, greed is the one that's kept humanity alive. If we did not have globalization, if the Iron Curtain had not fallen, if we didn't have JFK when we had JFK, we would not be here today. 100%. That's neither good nor bad. It just simply is. Understand it, occupy it, go with it.
Did you ever see that? Speaking of JFK, and speaking of not being here, did you ever see that show's 1969?
Yeah, with James Franco.
Yeah, with James
It's a good
Franco.
one, man.
No.
It's a good show.
Oh man. So I forget what it's on. It might be
I
on
think it's on
Prime.
Yeah, I think
Is it Prime or
might be
HBO?
I think it's HBO.
But anyway, basically goes in and this guy discovers a wormhole and falls back into 1969 or whenever JFK was assassinated.
69 or 68.
Something like.
Did he stop the bullet?
So what
Well,
happened?
that's like the whole idea.
That's the whole idea.
It's
Of
like
it
he's
was
gonna
that,
like go back and save or
Sure.
stop
Yeah.
stop what's his name
So like anytime he dies in Lee Harvey.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh,
God,
yes,
I like
so,
wanted to say
yeah.
John Wilkes Booth, but I was like, I know that's
No.
not right.
That's
Abraham
Abe.
Lincoln's
I was like, I
rolling
know
in
that's
his
not
grave
right.
now.
So
It's like I wanted to say that, but I was like, I know that's not right.
4 scores and 7
Yeah.
sacks ago.
Yeah. So essentially, like anytime that he dies in this alternate universe, he comes back to present. And then he goes and he falls back, and then he finds the wormhole and falls back in. And every time he goes back, he's trying something new to save JFK. And finally he does, and then he dies and he comes back to the real world, and it's just fucking chaos. The world's ending. All of this stuff is ending. It's a real interesting thing, and just kind of reminded me of what you were saying. Like if we didn't have JFK at that time and what happened, where we would be at today. And that's a show that kind of gives a glimpse of what something like that might happen. So
Yeah, I mean, even that statement that I made is kind of loaded because I don't know.
right.
You
I get
start
what you're saying, but it's just
Yeah, but
Start getting into like science fiction, or not even
Right.
science fiction, but like science, and it's like
Yeah.
alternative timelines. And what do you mean by that?
right.
yeah.
So
All I know is when you look back at human history, the Cold War, Revolutionary War, both world wars were so monumental to the trajectory of
oh,
humanity.
right. Just think if German would have won, like World War II, like, or where would we, like, what the fuck?
Total annihilation because communism doesn't work.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
other thing. It's like goes back to that center comment that I made of like, if America ever gets to the point where it doesn't have hegemony, at least in this hemisphere or the world, it'll be by choice, not because China and Russia is growing. It was because we allowed it. China and Russia, in a lot of ways, present to us an alternative America. What can happen if we don't have checks and balances, but we have alternative capabilities, we have the wealth, we have the capitalistic endeavors, but we kind of cap it with hierarchy and aristocracy? We should look to them as examples of what America could be. And not necessarily as competitors,
Yeah.
because they're not competitors. I don't care what anybody says. The economics of America, the GDP growth, especially now that Trump's in office, I'm not going to get political about like, the red versus blue. I really don't give a shit about that. But if they go about two things, if they deregulate and they go towards a pay for play, not pay for, if they start making every actor in NATO pay their fair share, if they start to do mild tariffs, not egregious ones, you are then going to start showing other countries the value of the American market. And more specifically, its ingenuity. We throttle ourselves constantly to the point that no other country does this. We tell our industries, we tell our best and brightest, no, you can't do that. You can't do this. And duly noted, it's been used against them prior in terms of like
What are some examples of that?
the steel industry back in the Industrial Revolution. You know what I mean? You had J.D. Rockefeller, you had J.P. Morgan, you had guys that really understood the integration between financial institutions and the productive capabilities of them. They were the first ones, I would say, and there are a slew of other people, but those two people individually were some of the people that understood that money to a certain point is now power. Now I have power. Power. J.P. Morgan is who funded the government. I believe it was. I'm gonna mess up the date. Historians, please correct me. But there was a year where President of the United States went to J.P. Morgan, basically issued U.S. Treasury bonds to him at a loss for J.P. Morgan for essentially institutional power carrying over. And J.P. Morgan funded the U.S. government for a period of time. That is human history. That's U.S. history. Forgive me. Is that good or bad? I would rather J.P. Morgan own it than China.
Yeah.
Right.
$35 trillion, $36 trillion of debt. I'm kind of going all over the place because, forgive me, but like so many of these things are intertwined with one another. The capital markets that we've kind of grown globalism towards, like to make, we don't want to make things. We'll let China make things and we'll consume things, but we'll still make certain things. And Russia is a player because of essentially just their production of energy. Without Russia, China can't exist. Full tilt. The number one consumer of energy in the world is China. their number one importer of energy is Russia. That's the only reason why Russia's a major player, other than its nuclear arsenal. But even that is like to be debated what the actual number are. Because if you're not keeping up with the technologies of the time, how many of those are inert, how many of those are no longer actually usable. Granted, it's overkill. You don't need that many. You need
Right.
100 nukes, you're good.
You're good.
Humanity's done, right? So forgive me, but without the greed of man, he would have already imploded, which is the great irony of artificial intelligence, because it is the greed of man that would cause it to go awry. But you could also make that argument prior. The problem with history is don't know it, you can be doomed to repeat it. But if you do know it, you may make the error of thinking that what's happened before will happen again. And that's not necessarily the case either. But every financial bubble since two. So I live in a world where there are variables within my control. That's what I focus on. But I'm also focused on the variables out of my control because they will navigate the playing field in which I operate my sport. My sport now is business. It's not necessarily fighting. But there are decisions made outside of my control that will affect the rules, right? Imagine you're playing hockey and halfway through the game, they tell you, okay, now everybody gets an extra man. That might seem like a little, but they didn't change the size of the rink. They
It's
didn't
fucking
change.
chaos.
It's chaos. It's too many people, right? So like now you're a little bit more
Constricted.
There's less options for certain things. Defense is easier, offense might be harder, or vice versa. I'm not like a hockey con.
No, you're absolutely right.
That is your life, and you don't even know it. There are constantly decisions being made, both within our realm, our purview, the U.S. Congress, executive, judicial, legislative branches, and geopolitically, globally. We are constantly trying to compete amongst one another in our own markets, and we are competing globally. And this is the rub that I feel like a lot of people kind of forget whenever they're talking about like legislation and taxing the rich and all this other shit. It sounds good until you get to step 2, step 3, step 4, and then you realize that you're not in isolation, that the rest of the world does not operate under the same rules that we do. They don't value life the way we do. And when I say we, I mean the U.S. populace, not Congress.
Yeah.
Ask anybody in politics. They don't value life any more than an Asian aristocrat or Eurasian Peninsula aristocrat. It's all the same. I have optimism for the trajectory of humanity based on the productive capabilities. We fight over power, not resources. Like I said, already today, poverty is a choice. With everyone, with the exception of like India and maybe some others, because India has over 1 billion population. That's too much.
Yeah.
India is a case example of why you don't want unfettered immigration.
Something we were talking about. Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
And forgive me because I feel like I'm kind of hogging this conversation.
No,
So,
no,
No,
it's-
you're killing it.
Well,